Good morning, fourth grade scholars. It's me, Miss Pachetti, here to teach you a lesson one, day one of Journeys. I'm so excited to be doing this with you this morning, and I hope you enjoy learning as much as I enjoy teaching it. To start off our day, I just want to go through a little bit of an outline as to what Journey's whole group is going to look like today. We're going to start off with half of the vocabulary words. So, vocabulary words 1 to 5. Then we're going to go into learning a little bit about the target skills and the target strategy that is aligned to our anchor text. And then we are going to finish off the morning whole group lesson with listening to the anchor text and answering some questions based off of it. Now it's time to get started with our lesson for today. Let's turn our listening ears on and let's go. All right, so for our first 5 vocabulary words, our first word that we have is comfort. Repeat after me. Comfort. Great. Comfort means to make someone feel better, right? Friends often comfort each other. They help each other get through hard times. Our next word is mention. The word mention means to say something, right? So let's look at it in a sentence. Do not mention one friend's faults to another. Keep them to yourself instead. Our third word that we're going to review is mood. Repeat after me. Mood. Great. Mood is the way a person feels. We can have many different moods, right? We could be in a happy mood. Can somebody tell me what other type of mood there is? Yes, you could be in an angry mood. Absolutely. Sad. It's okay to feel sad every once in a while. It's totally normal. So let's see the word mood in a sentence. Friends remain friends even when one is in a bad mood or emotional state. Our fourth vocabulary word that we're going to go over is properly. Repeat after me. Properly. Fantastic. Properly means correctly, in the right way. Listen as I read the word properly in a sentence. Friends often greet each other properly. A handshake is the correct way. And our fifth and final word that we're going to go over is the word intends. Repeat after me. Intends. Great, good job. And intends means plans to do something. Listen as I read the word intends in a sentence. This girl intends to keep in touch with a friend. She plans to send emails every day. Intend means to plan to do something. Okay? Now, let's take a look into the genre of our anchor text for this Journeys Lesson 1. The genre that we're going to be reviewing this week in Journeys is realistic fiction. Raise your hand if you've ever heard realistic fiction. Awesome. I know you all have heard this genre before. I know you've learned about it last year and in years past. So let's take a deeper look into the genre, right? Realistic fiction has characters and events that are like people and events in real life. As you read and listen to the anchor text Because of Winn-Dixie, which is one of my favorite stories, I want you to look for a setting that could be a real place, a plot with a beginning, middle, and ending, and characters who have feelings that real people have. The selection, Because of Winn-Dixie, has a setting that could be a real place. It also has characters who have feelings that real people have. That helps me understand why Because of Winn-Dixie is realistic fiction. Realistic fiction also describes people and events that are like people and events in real life. One purpose for reading is to discover what you think you might do or how you might feel if the events in the story happen to you. So that's a little background as to why Because of Winn-Dixie is realistic fiction and what realistic fiction is. And as you can see to the right of the screen, there are 3 novels there that are realistic fiction. Frindle, Owl Moon, and of course the chapter book of Because of Winn-Dixie. The anchor text that we're going to read Because of Winn-Dixie is an excerpt or a small portion of what is in the actual chapter book. To get into our target skill, like we mentioned before, our target skill for this lesson is story structure. Story structure has characters or people or animals in a story, a setting, which means where and when the story takes place, a plot, which has conflicts or problems, events, and resolutions or solutions to the problems. As you read Because of Winn-Dixie, I want you to ask yourself what the most important parts of the story are. The story's events make up the plot. I want you to look for details that help you picture the setting or where and when the story takes place. In addition, we're going to keep track of new characters as they are introduced. We are going to be using a graphic organizer that has characters, settings, and plots. Can somebody raise their hand and tell me what a graphic organizer is? Thank you for sharing. That's absolutely right. A graphic organizer is a great way for us to organize our thoughts, right? So in this graphic organizer, we're going to jot down who the characters in Because of Winn-Dixie are, where the setting is, and the plot. So as you listen or read Because of Winn-Dixie, I want you guys to keep in mind that we're looking for characters, setting, and plot to jot down. I want to take a look at the target strategy for Winn-Dixie. Our target strategy for this lesson is summarizing. And I know that a lot of you have done summarizing in the past, whether it's done when we did DRA, back when you guys were in the lower grades, when we did F&P. We've asked you to summarize when we did those assessments with you. Summarizing is when you summarize a story, you tell who the characters are and briefly retell the main events. Summarizing can help you understand and remember a story. Now, one important thing to remember when you are summarizing is it should be in your own words, right? So, yes, I'm going to pull different information and facts from the article when I'm summarizing, but I don't want to rewrite the whole story like it's written in the book. I want to retell the story in my own words. So as you read Because of Winn-Dixie, pause at the end of each page to summarize briefly what you have just read to make sure you understand it. Now we're going to listen to the text Because of Winn-Dixie. Raise your hand if you've ever seen the movie Because of Winn-Dixie, read the chapter book, maybe as a read aloud. Oh, some of you, I see some of you have your hands up. And if you haven't, that's okay. We're going to learn about it and read about it this week. And I hope that you love it as much as I love it, because this is, again, one of my favorite stories. So I want you to turn your listening ears on, sit back, relax, and enjoy the story.
Because of Winn-Dixie by Kate DiCamillo. 10-year-old Opal is a newcomer in the town of Naomi, Florida. She hasn't made any friends yet and feels a little lonely. Opal's only pal is a very big dog named after the grocery store where she found him, Winn-Dixie. I spent a lot of time that summer at the Herman W. Block Memorial Library. The Herman W. Block Memorial Library sounds like it would be a big fancy place, but it's not. It's just a little old house full of books, and Miss Franny Block is in charge of them all. She is a very small, very old woman with short gray hair, and she was the first friend I made in Naomi. It all started with Winn-Dixie not liking it when I went into the library because he couldn't go inside too. But I showed him how he could stand up on his hind legs and look in the window and see me in there, selecting my books, and he was okay, as long as he could see me. But the thing was, the first time Miss Franny Block saw Winn-Dixie standing up on his hind legs like that, looking in the window, she didn't think he was a dog. She thought he was a bear. This is what happened. I was picking up my books and kind of humming to myself, and all of a sudden there was this loud and scary scream. I went running up to the front of the library, and there was Miss Franny Block sitting on the floor behind her desk. "Miss Franny?" I said. "Are you all right?" "A bear," she said. "A bear?" I asked. "He has come back," she said. "He has?" I asked. "Where is he?" "Out there," she said, and raised a finger and pointed at Winn-Dixie standing up on his hind legs looking in the window for me. "Miss Franny Block," I said, "that's not a bear. That's a dog. That's my dog, Winn-Dixie." "Are you positive?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am," I told her. "I'm positive. He's my dog. I would know him anywhere." Miss Franny sat there trembling and shaking. "Come on," I said. "Let me help you up." "It's okay." I stuck out my hand, and Miss Franny took hold of it, and I pulled her up off the floor. She didn't weigh hardly anything at all. Once she was standing on her feet, she started acting all embarrassed, saying how I must think she was a silly old lady, mistaking a dog for a bear, but that she had a bad experience with a bear coming into the Herman W. Block Memorial Library a long time ago, and she never had quite gotten over it. "When did that happen?" I asked her. "Well," said Miss Franny, "it is a very long story." "That's okay," I told her. "I am like my mama in that I like to be told stories. But before you start telling it, can Winn-Dixie come in and listen too? He gets lonely without me." "Well, I don't know," said Miss Franny. "Dogs are not allowed in the Herman W. Block Memorial Library." "He'll be good," I told her. "He's a dog who goes to church." and before she could say yes or no, I went outside and got Winn-Dixie, and he came in and lay down with a humph and a sigh right at Miss Franny's feet. She looked down at him and said, "He most certainly is a large dog." "Yes, ma'am," I told her. "He has a large heart, too." "Well," Miss Franny said. She bent over and gave Winn-Dixie a pat on the head, and Winn-Dixie wagged his tail back and forth and snuffled his nose on her little old lady feet. Let me get a chair and sit down so I can tell this story properly. Back when Florida was wild, when it consisted of nothing but palmetto trees and mosquitoes so big they could fly away with you, Miss Franny Block started in, and I was just a little girl no bigger than you, my father, Herman W. Block, told me that I could have anything I wanted for my birthday. Anything at all. Miss Franny looked around the library. She leaned in close to me. "I don't want to appear prideful," she said, "but my daddy was a very rich man. A very rich man." She nodded and then leaned back and said, "And I was a little girl who loved to read. So I told him, I said, 'Daddy, I would most certainly love to have a library for my birthday. A small little library would be wonderful.'" "You asked for a whole library?" "A small one," Miss Franny nodded. "I wanted a little house full of nothing but books, and I wanted to share them too. And I got my wish. My father built me this house, the very one we are sitting in now. And at a very young age, I became a librarian. Yes, ma'am." "What about the bear?" I asked. "Did I mention that Florida was wild in those days?" Miss Franny Block said. "Uh-huh, you did. It was wild. There were wild men and wild women and wild animals. Like bears?" "Yes, ma'am, that's right. Now I have to tell you, I was a little Miss Know-it-all. I was a Miss Smarty Pants with my library full of books. Oh, yes, ma'am. I thought I knew the answers to everything. Well, one hot Thursday, I was sitting in my library with all the doors and windows open and my nose stuck in a book, when a shadow crossed the desk. And without looking up, yes, ma'am, without even looking up, I said, 'Is there a book I can help you find?' Well, there was no answer. And I thought it might have been a wild man or a wild woman scared of all these books and afraid to speak up. But then I became aware of a very peculiar smell, a very strong smell. I raised my eyes slowly, and standing right in front of me was a bear. Yes, ma'am, a very large bear." "How big?" I asked. "Oh, well," said Miss Franny, "perhaps 3 times the size of your dog." "Then what happened?" I asked her. "Well," said Miss Franny, "I looked at him, and he looked at me. He put his big nose up in the air and sniffed, as if he was trying to detect if a little Miss Know-it-all librarian was what he was in the mood to eat. And I sat there. And then I thought, well, if this bear intends to eat me, I am not going to let it happen without a fight, no ma'am. So very slowly and very carefully I raised up the book I was reading." "What book was that?" I asked. "Why, it was War and Peace, a very large book. I raised it up slowly, and then I aimed it carefully, and I threw it right at that bear and screamed, 'Begone!' And do you know what?" "No, ma'am," I said. "He went. But this is what I will never forget. He took the book with him." "Nuh-uh," I said. "Yes, ma'am," said Miss Franny. "He snatched it up and ran." "Did he come back?" I asked. "No, I never saw him again. Well, the men in town used to tease me about it. They used to say, 'Miss Franny, we saw that bear of yours out in the woods today. He was reading that book, and he said it sure was good, and would it be all right if he kept it for just another week?' Yes, ma'am, they did tease me about it." She sighed. "I imagine I'm the only one left from those days. I imagine I'm the only one that even recalls that bear. All my friends, everyone I knew when I was young, they are all dead and gone." She sighed again. She looked sad and old and wrinkled. It was the same way friendless in a new town and not having a mama to comfort me, I sighed too. Winn-Dixie raised his head off his paws and looked back and forth between me and Miss Franny. He sat up then and showed Miss Franny his teeth. "Well, now look at that," she said. "That dog is smiling at me." "It's a talent of his," I told her. "It is a fine talent," Miss Franny said. "A very fine talent." And she smiled back at Winn-Dixie. We could be good to Miss Franny. I mean, you and me and Winn-Dixie, we could all be friends. Miss Franny smiled even bigger. "Why, that would be grand," she said. "Just grand." And right at that minute, right when the three of us had decided to be friends, who should come marching into the Herman W. Block Memorial Library but old pinch-face Amanda Wilkinson. She walked right up to Miss Franny's desk and said, "I finished Johnny Tremaine, and I enjoyed it very much. I would like something even more difficult to read now, because I am an advanced reader." "Yes, dear, I know," said Miss Franny. She got up out of her chair. Amanda pretended like I wasn't there. She stared right past me. "Are dogs allowed in the library?" she asked Miss Franny as they walked away. "Certain ones," said Miss Franny. "A select few." And then she turned around and winked at me. I smiled back. I had just made my first friend in Naomi, and nobody was going to mess that up for me, not even old pinch-faced Amanda Wilkinson.
All right, scholars, we just finished our first read of Because of Winn-Dixie. Raise your hands if you enjoyed what you read and if you could relate to it. Fantastic. I love seeing all these hands. Yeah, a lot of you have moved to a place, didn't know anybody, and had to make friends. So I know that you could relate to this story. I have plenty of connections to this story. It's really good when you listen and read a story and you're able to make text-to-text connections, text-to-self connections, and text-to-world connections. Now, I want to ask a few questions. What is the setting of the story in the beginning? What is the setting? Excellent answer. The Herman W. Block Memorial Library in the town of Naomi, Florida. That is the setting. Excellent answer. What was Miss Fanny Block like as a child, and how do you know? Let's put those thinking caps on. What did it say in the story? Fantastic answer. You really had your listening ears on. She was smart and loved reading. She was brave and a quick thinker. Her actions and her words reveal what she was like. That was a great answer. Thank you for participating. How does Amanda act toward Opal? What does her behavior tell you about Amanda? Yes. She pretends Opal is not there. Amanda just pretends that Opal doesn't even exist. You're absolutely right. And that can lead us to believe, based off evidence, that Amanda's not nice. And she doesn't really like Opal. Thank you so much for participating. You had wonderful answers. All right, that's it for whole group. It's time to start hitting the books, go to small group, and work with your teacher, and then complete your independent work. Thank you so much for listening, and I can't wait to teach you more. Genre.